There's no doubt that Justin Trudeau is a gifted politician. He has a way of connecting with people, and he's very articulate. But there's one area where he's seriously lacking: economic policy. In fact, his economic policies are so misguided that they could end up causing a major inflationary fire. Here's the thing: Trudeau wants to increase government spending, but he's not proposing any real ways to pay for it. So he's planning on printing more money, which will inevitably lead to inflation. And once inflation starts to kick in, it can be really hard to stop. We could end up in a situation where prices are soaring and the economy is in a tailspin. So while Justin Trudeau may be a great politician, he's not someone you want in charge of the economy. His policies could end up doing a lot of damage, and we could all end up paying the price. Welcome to Savvy Economists. In this video, we will discuss how current Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau policies could lead to an inflationary fire. Don't forget to please watch, like, and share this video if you enjoy it. Also, leave your comments and thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more related content similar to this. Justin Trudeau is about to start an inflationary fire with his policy. By increasing taxes on the wealthy and businesses, he is effectively taking money out of the economy and putting it into the government's coffers. This will lead to less money available for investment, which will, in turn, lead to higher prices and inflation. While this may be good for the government in the short term, it will be bad for the economy in the long term. During a May meeting in the House of Commons of Canada, Jamie Schmale, who represents the riding of Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, and a member of the Conservative Party, spoke bitterly about regular Canadians struggling to get by and how they have called for relief from carbon tax, but nothing seems to be done. He talked about how the increase in fuels and drying had a cascading effect, with the prices of groceries now extremely out of control. Jamie further said that he would not stop talking about the causes of inflation with a bill that is adding additional $70 billion in new spending, and also how the expansion of money supplied by printing money is hurting everyday constituents, and people are struggling from these policies. CIBC's Deputy Chief Economist Benjamin Tal says that the federal government's recent spending spree risks fueling inflationary pressures in the economy. While some of the spending is needed to stimulate the economy in the short term, Tal warns that the government needs to be careful not to overdo it and create an inflationary problem down the road. He says that the Bank of Canada will be watching the situation closely and may need to raise interest rates sooner than expected if inflationary pressures start to build. According to a report from Bloomberg, CIBC is warning that Justin Trudeau's spending could risk stoking inflationary fire. Based on the report, it is obvious that Trudeau's economic stimulus spending is necessary for the short term, but it could lead to inflationary pressures down the road. Therefore, the government needs to focus on targeted spending that will have the most impact, rather than broad-based stimulus. The bank's chief economist, Avery Schenfeld, says the government needs to be careful not to overheat the economy, or inflation could become a problem. He says the Bank of Canada is already concerned about inflation, and if the government keeps spending, it could force the central bank to raise interest rates. There is no doubt that Justin Trudeau's government is spending heavily. They have already racked up over $100 billion in new debt and are on track to add even more this year. With interest rates rising and the economy showing signs of slowing down, there is a real risk that this spending could fuel an inflationary fire. Trudeau and his team are clearly gambling that they can keep the economy growing strongly enough to offset the increased debt burden. But with the potential approaching recession and other economic headwinds, that gamble could very well backfire. If inflation starts to pick up, it could quickly spiral out of control, leaving the Canadian economy in a very precarious position. Critics also say that the government is spending too much too quickly and that this could lead to inflationary pressures. They point to Trudeau's campaign promises, which included significant new spending on infrastructure and social programs. There is also concern that the government is not doing enough to control spending. According to a report by Statista, Canada had a national debt of $2,156.84 billion in 2021, and the national debt is expected to increase to $2,257.44 billion by 2027. All of this spending could put pressure on interest rates, which would, in turn, increase the cost of borrowing. This could lead to higher prices for consumers and businesses and ultimately lead to inflation. According to a May post by Fraser Institute, federal debt interest is projected to cost approximately $26.9 billion in 2022-23 and then reach an estimated $42.9 billion in 2026-27. Economists are also warning that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government should avoid using any windfall revenue to add to spending, as this could lead to inflationary pressures. They point to Trudeau's promise during the election campaign to run modest deficits of up to $10 billion per year over the next 2 years and say that if the government were to use any unexpected revenue to increase spending, it could put the economy at risk. Others have suggested that the government could use the money to invest in infrastructure or other productive assets, which would help to boost economic growth. Whatever the government decides to do with any windfall revenue, economists are urging caution and cautionary spending in order to avoid jeopardizing the country's economic stability. Avery Schenfeld, the chief economist at Canadian Imperial Bank, has said that fiscal largesse is not needed for the economy right now. He believes that the economy is currently in good shape and that the government should focus on reducing the deficit. Schenfeld believes that tax cuts and infrastructure spending are not needed at this time and that the government should instead focus on reducing the debt. He also said that if no actions are taken, a recession is very likely in the next 2 years. There is no doubt that Canadian households are under pressure. Record levels of debt, high housing costs, and now rising interest rates are all taking their toll. Many families are struggling to make ends meet, and some are even forced to make tough choices between essentials like food and shelter. Trudeau's policies are not making things any easier for Canadian families, and it is clear that something needs to change. According to a Bloomberg post, Robert Kavcic, senior economist at the Bank of Montreal, says that households are seriously in need of help from the inflammatory environment. The only silver lining right now is that the economy is still doing relatively well, meaning that household incomes are rising. But even this may not be enough to offset the other pressures that households are facing. The government is aware of these risks and has said that it is monitoring the situation closely. Finance Minister Bill Morneau has said that the government is committed to fiscal discipline and will take steps to ensure that spending is sustainable. Only time will tell if the government's spending will lead to inflationary pressures. For now, it is clear that Trudeau's government is taking a risk by spending heavily. Thank you for watching. See you next time.